BioShock has a variety of weapons, and let's face it, magic spells to aid you on your rampage through Rapture. I mean, you can claim they're genetic engineering all you like, but ain't no way tinkering with your helixes can let you freeze a dude solid. But what if you wanted to cut out the middleman? Get rid of all that boring shooting and shocking and what have you? What if you wanted to simply snap your fingers and cause people to spontaneously turn to ash? Wait a minute, that sounds familiar. Can you beat BioShock with only Incinerate? No points for guessing the rules. I'm only allowed to damage enemies with the Incinerate plasmid. Its upgrades, Incinerate 2 and Incinerate 3, are not allowed. For bonus rules, I have to save every little sister in the game, and I'm not allowed to use Vita Chambers. I'm expecting tonics will play a big part in the success of this run, and that I'll have to be pretty stingy with my Eve. While other plasmids and weapons are technically allowed if I don't damage enemies with them, I'll try to use them as little as possible, although this isn't an official rule. Now, with all that aside, let's get started. Our story begins with Jack, the not-so-silent protagonist, miraculously surviving a plane crash over the ocean. To correct the natural order of things, I attempt to kill myself by floating in a patch of burning fuel. But instead, I pull a Joshua Graham.
I survived because the fire inside burned brighter than the fire around me.
And float over to Rapture, an underwater city that is basically a libertarian's wet dream, quite literally in this case. I then see an advertisement for the Incinerate plasmid, and in this case, the advertising worked, because that's the only one I'll be using for the whole run. Andrew Ryan, the leader of Rapture, then goes on a speech about how man is entitled to the sweat of his brow, and how man shouldn't be constrained by moral standards. Wow guys, look, a whale! Anyways, we get a good taste of this city's hospitality when a splicer hooks up with Johnny, and I stand there like, while she tries to pry open my bathysphere like a can of sardines. Splicers are basically people who have become addicted to rearranging their genes, and not in the fashion sense. They'll ravage anyone they see to slurp up the genetic goo inside them. That sounded a lot less wrong in my head. Anyways, Atlas, our new buddy, scares her off with some gunfire. Atlas is an Irish gentleman looking for his lost wife and child in Rapture, and it's up to me to help him. He's also a Half-Life fan,
Would you kindly find a crowbar or something?
with a suggestion giving me my first weapon, a wrench. I use it to clear some rubble, which obviously has enough space for me to crawl through, and this doesn't fail the run since last time I checked, random rubble isn't an enemy. This splicer certainly is though, so I let him bump into a flaming couch a couple dozen times until he can't take it anymore. Finding a giant syringe of red goo lying around, I do what any sane person would do and jam it into my wrist without hesitation. I then throw myself off a balcony, Lord knows that'll help the situation, and despite it being a pretty short fall onto a rug, I get knocked prone. While on the floor, I get accosted by a dude with facial paralysis.
This little fish looks like he just had his cherry popped.
And almost get killed by a little girl. Using my newfound zappy hands to open a door, again, not an enemy, doesn't count, I find yeah, this city deserves to be torn apart. And then, I come across a problem. I need to get through this door, but for some unexplained reason, it won't open until I kill this random splicer, which I can't do since the water isn't high enough to zap him, and there's nothing else in the room I can use to kill him. So, I have to grit my teeth and smack him twice with my wrench, technically failing the run. I'm gonna treat this like the Rad Roach in Fallout 3. You need to do it to progress the game, so it doesn't count. If you disagree, feel free to dislike the video and tell me in the comments. Luckily, I can just book it to the elevator to avoid the other splicers. That strategy works up until we're shown what a Big Daddy, the protectors of the little girls, are capable of, and then are forced to kill a bunch of splicers to move on. The flamethrower turret behind this grate can be used to kill the splicers without me damaging them, as it has an area of effect. So, with enough patience and burn wounds to make Joshua Graham blush, I get my first run-in with Andrew Ryan and hack a security bot to do the dirty work for me. This is the only time I do this in the run, by the way. After a bit of running around like a weasel on crack, I finally find the Incinerate plasmid.
Light up foes to 1,000 degrees. Warning, fire spreads.
And now, with a way to fight back, I get to work making Splicer BBQ. It doesn't do much damage up front. The real kicker is the damage over time, which lasts long enough to kill a regular splicer in 1 or 2 uses. The downside is, it can be tricky to aim sometimes, and your foes won't die immediately, so you'll have to take cover while they go down in flames. It's also quite handy for melting ice as I demonstrate, something you'll have to do to progress. Something weird happens when I go to fight this doctor. He does a big daddy slide right into my face and scares the shit out of me. Not really important to the video, just something I thought was worth mentioning. Eventually, I come to a blockage that I have to clear using telekinesis. Getting the plasmid is easy enough. I pick up a grenade and throw it to open the way forward, making sure it doesn't damage anything, and I interrupt Steinman's creepy monologue with a bunch of security bots coming for my booty. Steinman ends up being a total pushover as he backs up into a pool of flaming oil and kills himself. Hey, works for me. Moving on, we're introduced to this game's big moral dilemma. Do you kill the little girls, or save them? Either way, you get around the same amount of Adam by the end, and saving them also gives you tonics and extra loot, so it's really not that hard of a choice. With the Adam from baptizing the child, I get Armored Shell to reduce the damage I take, and Eve Link to make first aid kits restore my Eve, which is basically how long you can use your plasmids for. I decide to ignore the Big Daddy for now, but I have a good reason for that. And that reason is simple. I want to test how hard a Big Daddy will be to defeat before I go gung-ho on one. While the plasmid doesn't do much to him, his large hitbox makes him easy to immolate, and while he does do a lot of damage, taking cover and stockpiling first aid kits makes that a non-issue. His bombs are also easily telegraphed, so no issues dodging them. Beating one is just a matter of patience, as with enough Incinerates stacked on him at once, his health will slowly but surely tick down to 0. With another little sister saved, I stock back up on Eve hypos, get a health upgrade, and continue on in Neptune's bounty. I meet a paranoid nutter named Peach Wilkins who will only let me continue if I take some pictures of spider splicers, fucking perv. A spider splicer, by the way, is like a regular splicer that can crawl on the ceiling and throw hooks at you, and like any spider, I kill it with fire. Well, try to kill it. The game says they're too tough for me and it gets scared off in a scripted sequence. I find another Big Daddy, but this time I'm smart and let a missile turret soften him up first. A bit of running around this metal pole later, that's another little sister under my belt. I then get the research camera, and with Peaches being like, "Get me more pictures of spider splicers," I have to oblige his desires. The camera is also useful for other things, like increasing your damage and getting new tonics, and the kicker is, it does no damage, so it doesn't count against the rules. The second spider splicer I get a picture of while it's on fire, which I think should give me extra points, and I also researched the leadhead splicer enough to get me Scrounger, letting me apparate new loot out of thin air. For the final spider splicer, I take 3 photos consecutively, researching it enough to let me use its organs like first aid kits. Just don't forget to cook them first. With all the photos I need, I kill another Big Daddy, which I've already proven I can do, so no use going over it, relinquish my weapons, which I wasn't using anyway, so I don't mind, get backstabbed by him as he thinks I work for Fontaine, which, yeah, that's kinda true, and I proceed to turn his ass into extra crispy peach cobbler, as he's basically a glorified nitro splicer with a bunch of health, so nothing I can't deal with. Since I know I can take care of Big Daddies no problem, I head back to the medical pavilion to save the last little sister from there. Back in the freezer, I find the first power to the people machine, but since I can't use any weapons, they're kinda pointless. I then meet the Irish gentleman himself, who just looks like any other splicer. Why am I helping this guy again? Oh yeah, cause he's just so polite.
Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find
Some oil on the ground and explosive canisters clean up the splicers on the way to the sub, but when I get there... Atlas's family breaks the stereotype of Irish luck. The next level is Arcadia, a botanical garden, oh no, getting Nurbit flashbacks, with a new type of splicer, the Houdinis. They're basically cultist frat boys that can vanish faster than my dad going out for milk, and unlike my dad, reappear just as quickly. The funny thing about them is that when you set them on fire, they still take normal damage over time when teleporting, so there's a chance they'll reappear either dead or close to it. This level also introduces us to electric tripwires, which hurt a lot when touched but break after one use. You can jump over some of them, but it requires a bit of a run-up to do so. The first section isn't too hard, although there is a lot of water around the splicers can use to extinguish themselves. You're supposed to use Electro Bolt when they get in the water to kill them, but since I can't use that plasmid, I just have to play the waiting game. The first Big Daddy gets distracted fighting a splicer, so killing him is easier than usual. The second section kicks off with Andrew Ryan ripping a fat one all over Arcadia, meaning I have to enlist the help of a tree hugger lest I suffocate. Another Big Daddy and some roses to cover up the smell later, she lets me in, but Ryan rips a fat one on her as well, so now I have to do a fetch quest in her place. I already collected some of the chlorophyll, and you can find it on Houdini splicers, so that's easy at least. I also find all the water I need easily enough in the winery. Last is the B enzymes, but before that I get a bunch of tonic slots and two very important tonics, Eve Saver and Human Inferno. Human Inferno increases the fire damage I inflict, so if I didn't get it, I wouldn't be the brightest knife in the drawer. I mean, the sharpest bulb in the... you get what I mean. You can get all the honeybee spit in one go if you're quick enough and don't mind getting stung a little. With the Lazarus Vector invented, I now have to fend off waves of splicers while I wait for it to work its magic. I find the best way to do this is to hide in this cubbyhole, as the small space makes it harder for the splicers to surprise me and means they'll bump into each other more often, spreading the flames. This works against me when a flaming splicer shoulder checks a Big Daddy, and the damage is somehow attributed to me, making him gun for my ass. Luckily, the turrets in here have already severely injured him, so I can finish him and the other splicers off no problem. Now that I've ironically used fire to save the trees, I make tracks to Fort Frolic to finish this once and for all. But, of course, it's never that simple. No, some delusional artist by the name of Sandra Cohen blocks off my bathysphere and forces me to participate in the world's most dangerous game. Basically, he has 3 disciples of his he wants me to whack and then put photos of in his masterpiece. The splicers here aren't too much harder, although the nitro splicers have either gotten more tankier and more resistant to fire, as they take a lot more uses of Incinerate to go down, or maybe I just need to photograph them more. The first disciple is a chill dude, who, even with my power over fire, still manages to freeze me solid. That comes back to bite him though, as I easily melt his cronies like popsicles and then move on to the man himself. One of his nitro splicers rebels against him, however, so I burn old Martin Finnegan to a crisp easily enough. The melee Big Daddy's dash can be dodged with good timing, and the spider splicers that come after, ironically, drop like flies. The next disciple is Cobb, a Discord mod who attacks me with his army of kittens. Well, since they all start off on fire anyways, that's just giving me a head start. The man himself is basically just a nitro splicer with extra health, so a bit of patience and he just can't take the heat. The second Big Daddy I cheese by hopping between the 2 sets of stairs, giving me enough time to attack him, but not him enough time to attack me. It's here where I get access to Incinerate 2, which does more damage at the cost of more Eve. I'm not gonna buy it right now, as I want to see if I can beat the game with just the original, but if push comes to shove, I always have the option. I do get a bunch of tonic slots and a health and Eve upgrade though. The last disciple is Hector, who, like Cobb, is basically a glorified nitro splicer. Only difference is the little fucker has a shit ton more health and is too much of a coward to fight, instead opting to frolic all around Fort Frolic like a weasel on crack. Wait, did I already use that analogy? A ferret on speed. Finally, Cohen's masterpiece is complete. He congratulates me with a mediocre tonic, and after thinking it over, after how he sent splicers after me, and forced me to go through all this shit, yeah, here's a spark of inspiration for you, you pretentious fuckface. Next up is Hephaestus, where I start seeing leadhead splicers with machine guns. They take more punishment before going down and can fire a lot quicker, but don't do as much damage per shot, so it balances out. Like in Arcadia, a Big Daddy bumps into a splicer I set alight, so now I have to fight him as well. The tight corridors make his melee attacks a bit more dangerous, but nothing I can't endure. Hephaestus also introduces electrified splicers, but they're just as vulnerable to fire as anything else, so overall a non-factor. I then max out my tonic slots, get another Health and Eve upgrade, and get both Vending Expert 2 and Eve Link 2. After making it to the lab, I now have to do another fetch quest, sound familiar, but this time it's for making a bomb rather than tree serum. Really wish I could have picked that ionic gel up earlier. The Rule 34 wiring is found on Big Daddies, which I've already killed plenty of, so that's not a problem. The nitroglycerin is locked behind a glass case which I forgot how to open, so I ram my body into every electrified wire in the place thinking that would do it. But it was actually a button on the desk. Ouch. Finally, the ionic gel is just sorta strewn about, and since I remember where I saw it earlier, that's a piece of cake as well. With the bomb constructed, I somehow lug it all the way over to the core despite it almost being as big as me, but before I can set it off, I have to play tower defense while spinning a wheel. At least that's what the game wants me to do, but you can just take a little break once in a while to kill the splicers and then go straight back to spinning. I activate the EMP bomb, run through everything to get to Ryan's office, and in a twist nobody saw coming, Atlas was only so polite to me because his catchphrase, "Would you kindly," was a Pavlov's bell for making me his lapdog. Also, I was born in a lab, the memories of my parents are false, and I actually hijacked the plane to make it crash on purpose. Andrew Ryan then hands me a golf club and orders me to kill him, since his city is in ruins and to prove that I'm a slave that has to do what I'm told. And so I happily pull a driver Neffy on his ass.
Obey!
Get fucked.
Soon after, Atlas reveals that he was Frank Fontaine, Ryan's rival, the whole time, and he was playing me for a fool with his fake sob story. Instead of just saying, "Would you kindly shoot yourself in the head," he trusts that the man who survived hundreds of splicers, Big Daddies, security bots, and all sorts of other shit will die to a few flimsy machine guns on helicopters. Not the smartest move there, Frankie. Tenenbaum, maker of the Little Sisters, removes some of Frank's mind control and directs me to the Mercury Suite so I can clear my head fully. But Frank can still pull a memetic kill agent and tell my heart to stop beating, lowering my maximum health, so I'll have to be careful. In Olympus Heights, the Nitro Splicers gain a huge health boost, almost as much as Hector, who was supposed to be a boss character. Or maybe they're just really resistant to fire, I don't know. Anyways, combine that with the pools of water they can use to extinguish themselves, and I end up wasting tons of time and hypos trying to take them down. I end up reloading a save and trying to play this a bit smarter. While fire is pretty ineffective against machines, and I haven't bothered damaging any machines until this point, it does kill them, just very slowly. Igniting cameras and turrets 2 or 3 times and waiting for them to explode proves effective at clearing the battlefield, letting me focus on the nitros. For them, I have to lead them away from the pools of water while dodging their explosives so they have more time to burn. When I'm finished with them, my bulging wallet can stock me back up on first aid and hypos. This level is where Incinerate starts to fall off in general, as even basic splicers take much more time and Eve to kill. Nevertheless, with determination on my side, I find the Lot 192 compound, and while it does help undo Frank's control, it also scrambles my plasmids. This presents a problem, as I can only attack using plasmids, making me basically defenseless. Luckily, not for long. Before heading to Point Prometheus, I double-check each level to make sure I rescued all the Little Sisters. Now, it's time to finish this once and for all. I find Fontaine, who, like Atlas, looks like a splicer, despite the fact he stayed away from plasmids due to their negative effects. Anyways, in order to get to him, I have to become a Big Daddy so I can get a Little Sister to open the door. First off is my voice, which I change by letting this claw thingy rip out my vocal cords and shove in new ones, despite not even standing close to it. Second is the pheromone samples, one of which I find in a Little Sister's room. Second one I find fighting a Big Daddy, and the third I find upstairs. I then get Human Inferno 2, making my fire damage even more effective, and Medical Expert 3. Third part of becoming a Big Daddy is the suit, with the helmet turning my FOV into Quake Pro. Speaking of Big Daddies, I kill the final one of the game and get the achievement for rescuing all the little sisters, fulfilling one part of the challenge. With the boots and bodysuit, which reduces all damage by 25% by the way, I can now do the most fun type of quest in a game. An escort mission. Only I have to escort a defenseless little girl through a bunch of spliced up freak shows while she stabs corpses with a needle repeatedly. If I were Jack, I'd probably just pick her up and stop her from harvesting the splicers, but oh well. The splicers usually focus on her more than me, giving me some breathing room, and there are usually puddles of oil or other hazards to help me out, so honestly, could be worse. The really annoying part is how the little girl always stays by your feet and blocks your movement, and how she won't move unless you're behind her. It would make more sense if the heavily armored killing machine were to go first, but whatever. With that slog complete, I get the last upgrades of the run, stock fully on first aid and hypos, and I go to kill Dr. Manhattan. But there's a problem. His first form uses fire, and because of this, he gains an immunity to fire. Since I can only use fire to attack, I think you can see where this is going. At least, that's what I originally thought, but paying closer attention, Incinerate does hurt him, but only by a small amount. He's immune to the damage over time, but not the initial damage. With this knowledge, I first used the explosive canisters and oil spills around the arena to inflict major damage on the guy, and then slowly but surely whittle his health down until he moves on to a second phase. While this does use up 2 full Eve hypos and then some, I'm confident I have enough left to finish him off. His second phase uses ice, and we all know what happens when ice and fire mix, so suffice to say, it's not a problem. He also starts summoning security bots and splicers to help him, but I have so much defense, health, and first aid at this point that it's like being swarmed by mosquitoes. His final phase is electricity, and since it has no special resistance to fire, it goes down just like phase 2. Defeating him somehow kills all the splicers and robots around too, and he gives me an extra spicy backhand that leaves me prone unlike all his other melee attacks. For his blatant violation of logic, he is sentenced to death by dozens of little girls, and I prove that yes, you can beat BioShock with only Incinerate. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a suggestion for a new challenge. I do read them and your idea may become an official video. If you didn't like the video, feel free to dislike and give constructive criticism so I can improve. If you really liked the video, consider donating to my Patreon. It's $5 a month, which is about 17 cents a day. If you donate, you'll get your name at the end of each video, and any challenge suggestion you give me is much more likely to become a real video. Check out my Discord if you want to hang out and chat, or if you're thirsty for more content, check out my Reddit page. Or check out my second channel, The Loophole, where I post clips, experiments, memes, and other random stuff that doesn't fit on my main channel. This is Causal Loop, signing off. Peace.